Which heroes are the best? It's a question that gets asked often and deserves an answer. Heroes in The Walking Dead No Man's Land are powerful characters from the show who have the typical traits of a survivor plus one leadership trait. This is a unique ability that, if the hero is put in the leader slot, is imparted to every member of the team. There are a lot of heroes in the game, and some have traits that are hugely effective in helping you tackle a challenging mission. Others, not so much. Keeping a hero leveled up and performing at their peak requires time, XP, and reroll and hero tokens, so it's not reasonable to expect to invest in every single character as you level up. It's wise to decide who to unlock ASAP and take with you on your story, and who to leave on the bench languishing in a tedious C-plot until you need them. I'll go through who I think are the best characters, as in those who will objectively help you get through missions you would otherwise struggle with were you to take other heroes. I'll also go through traits I think are worth re-rolling on a hero and equipment that'll help you get the most out of your character. Honourable mentions will go to those who are worth considering as backups or are otherwise just good heroes for their class for one reason or another, and then I'll go through the characters who just sort of turned up. The Laurie Grimeses of the group. The first S-tier hero, the one who comes to mind when I think amazing hero, is Sasha. Her leadership trait is the phenomenal good out of bad. I'll be calling it Goob from now on. This has a percentage chance of making body shots earn a charge point. Something often asked by newer players is, why is that useful? Don't you just want more damage? Don't you want to just kill what you're hitting at? Well, at higher levels, body shots are inevitable. They're essentially anti-critical attacks that result in fractional damage and often do not activate any special effect an attack might otherwise have. Click on the stars at the top right of a character's profile, their rarity level, to see when the likelihood of attacks resulting in body shots will skyrocket. At higher levels, you must use criticals or unique attacks to cause damage and otherwise affect the target. Otherwise, you plink away for turn after turn with little result as they bear down on you, and then you get eaten. Sasha can earn charge points without having to land a kill that at high difficulties you're going to have to work really, really hard to earn if you're relying on standard attacks. Sasha is a hunter, meaning you can land multiple hits per turn with standard weapons, especially if you have somebody like Yumiko or Guardian Carol leading, as they can allow you to make multiple attacks. Sasha is an amazing leader and an amazing team member if you're rolling with the right crew. Mercer is one of two great heroes in the Assault class worth mentioning. Man at Arms is his leadership trait. The percentage chance to avoid status effects like stunned is okay. It's not something to rely on, but it is a nice to have. The other aspect of his trait, though, is amazing. Here's what it means in practice. No matter how tough or high level a target is, when Man at Arms kicks in, a percentage amount of the target's hit points gets taken off. It could be a tank that's 30 levels higher than that of your highest level survivor. You might land just a body shot. You will still take a significant amount of health from them. It makes him extremely useful when you're facing enemies of a level that you'd normally not be able to inflict any meaningful damage on. Since he's an assault, he can hit multiple targets at once, making for a great chance for his trait to kick in. He makes an excellent team member, but also a fantastic leader. She's a shooter, so that means that she has long range and causes high damage, and her firing squad trait means that any ranged survivor in range and with line of sight to her target will open fire on it too, with slightly reduced damage. This is amazing. It means that you can impose effects like incendiary, ensnare, cripple, or stun effects on multiple targets. It means abilities like Sasha's Goob and Princess's Royal Rampage have more chances to kick in as you're landing additional shots per turn. Plus, you're just smashing so much ammo into a target, even very tough enemies can find this constant chipping of their health causes credible damage when they're subject to it turn after turn. A caveat for Yumiko is that you need an all-shooter team to really get maximum value out of her ability. Now, melee characters do indeed have their own strengths and uses, but it's hard to feel that this qualifier is a problem for Yumiko. So that would be my answer to the question. Who are the best heroes? In my opinion, it's Yumiko, Mercer, and Sasha. Together, they form a unit which is just so competitive. They really are very powerful individually, but especially together. Are there other heroes worth considering? Oh yeah, a melee hero's powerful as well. Oh yeah, I don't think anything quite touches these guys in terms of just their sheer ability, but let's have a look at all of the other heroes anyway. Going back to Sasha's class, I reckon there are 2 hunters in the roster who are worth considering. Guardian Carol sticks out in that respect. Coup de grace grants the chance to acquire charge points when inflicting a status effect on an enemy, and to also make an instant additional attack with reduced damage if your initial attack does not kill the target. Both are pretty impressive skills. I prefer the guaranteed reliability of Yumiko's extra shots, and you're strictly picking a status affecting weapon if you want to make use of both sides of this trait. But she's a favourite pick of mine, and I found her to be really effective as a leader or as a team member. The second hunter that I reckon is worth mentioning is Shane. His overall effectiveness is not a patch on Sasha or Guardian Carol, but he is a lot of fun. His usefulness tapers off as you get to higher levels because his ability takes effect when you've made a kill, but it doesn't help you get that kill initially. It causes some impressive collateral damage when it does kick off, and it can impose stun effects on nearby walkers, and it is just a ton of fun to see Shane's explosive bullets carve a path through a swath of walkers, making explosions erupt everywhere. He's not as effective as the other two, but he is a lot of fun to use. Daryl is a hero who's there from the start, and it's easy to get tokens for him, but his silent shot trait is not that great. For those missions where you want to avoid being noisy, this trait isn't good enough to rely on as a strategy for success. If you must not make noise, use melee characters or silent weapons like bows or scout and warrior weapons with threat reducing abilities. It's stuff that you can more easily rely upon. As for the critical chance boost, which is part of his trait, well, it's something that several characters and traits can provide, but here's why it's not so useful. Most of the best heroes harvest charge points without the kill being a requisite. If you're using Sasha, and you should, body shots can be a boon for you. You can go about twisting yourself into knots, trying to get crits from normal attacks, knowing full well that at extreme difficulties the chances of them happening are vanishingly small no matter what you do. As for body shots, you can allow them to happen and negate, work round, or even take advantage of them. Frankly, you're better off doing the latter, as the former requires loads of effort and has all the effect of peeing against the wind. So back to Daryl, that's why Silent Shot isn't such a great trait. And the reasons it doesn't work for him are the reasons that it won't work for anything that improves critical chance, those kinds of traits and abilities. So, Alpha. Well, we've got into the crit chance fallacy earlier. Her ability to move after landing a body shot, which her cold-blooded ability grants, is pretty nice at times, but really, there are other ways for characters to have this kind of thing. You can have tactical weapon traits and the like, and if a swarm is bearing down on you with rotten teeth flashing about to take you out, and you're just plugging away with body shots, this isn't really going to help. If you love this ability, use Rosita, she's better, and if you really want to get the most out of body shots, use Sasha, obviously. Dwight's Desperation leadership trait causes more damage against non-normal walkers and humans. Sounds okay, and it is okay, but we have quite a few heroes, including those 2 great heroes in the Hunter class, who do this kind of thing better. When you get to higher difficulties, that extra damage is going to really tail off. Dwight's ability is quite situational, and also Hilltop Maggie's leadership trait has a bit more utility, even if it is luck based, if you want this kind of thing. So unfortunately, Dwight doesn't really get that much of a look in. Wow, there's a lot of hunters in this game, but we finally got to Maggie. Her skill doesn't help you win battles. If you want experience points, you're much better using more effective characters and reaping the rewards of a more challenging mission than you are on relying on the funkily named Harvest Red. That's a lot of hunters to consider. Anyway, going back to Mercer's class, who else is worth considering as an assault character? Princess is the other great assault character. Royal Rampage is her trait, and it has two solid components. She causes extra damage against enemies under the influence of status effects, which is pretty handy. But she also has a chance to get a charge point when she hits a target affected by status effects. There's some great synergy between those two aspects of her leadership trait. Since many assault weapons and other types of weapon inflict status effects like stun, she can be the provider of her own charge points. The caveat for Princess is that she needs to have a team on board who can inflict such effects to really get the most out of her, but most great weapons and characters will indeed do that anyway. Rosita can be useful. She does have some utility for sure. She gives a huge damage boost against single targets. It's not hugely useful for an assault, but at least it makes it feel like you haven't wasted an attack if it only hits one thing, and it makes the likes of scouts and shooters hit really hard if she is the leader. Deadly Tactics also lets you move a half action point if you attack multiple enemies, so there's two facets that make it an interesting skill. It just pales when compared to the big two in this class. Abraham may be a classic character in the show, but in the game, he only offers a very modest boost to damage and health. It's just not going to make that much of a difference to anything, so he's got to stay on the bench. Rufus is this redneck stereotype who looks like he'd belong in a Harold and Kumar film more than The Walking Dead. He's a dungaree wearing southern hill folk guy with a big old beard and a checkered shirt and a straw hat where he keeps his moonshine when them feds are walking around. Ugh. His health boost doesn't count for much when you get to the point where any attack will send your health bar red or kill you, and getting a charge point when the threat counter reaches 0 is kind of nice, it's kind of interesting, but there's ways to negate the threat counter instead. Not every mission type has a counter, and the best leadership traits are not so situational. The Governor is a bit like Maggie. He doesn't help you in battle, and you're just frankly better off taking a team that will see you through tougher, more rewarding challenges if you want those greater rewards. He also has to take the leader spot for his leadership trait to take effect. So, yeah, screw him. Is Yumiko the only person in the shooter class worth considering? Not by a long shot. There's plenty of good characters in here, so let's take a look at them. So Yumiko is the shooter to use. Who else in that class is pretty flippin' good? Well, Rick has a really fun trait that powers up as the battle progresses, making you hit with more power and have a greater chance of earning an extra charge point when making a kill. Inspiration is good, but you gotta get a few kills to get the ball rolling, which is tough when you get to those high difficulties. So he kinda comes into his own if you've already started making progress. Being able to hit the ground running right from the off, as you can do with the best of class, is more useful, but still, Sheriff Grimes ain't bad. Hilltop Maggie is another character who grants extra attacks, in fact a full action point. Keeping the peace means she has a percentage chance of getting a free action point whenever she shoots a non-normal walker or human. It's handy if you're taking on survivor battles and missions with loads of unique walkers, though I do find Yumiko's ability reliably kicking in under all circumstances does have more utility. In the shooter roster, Aaron he's okay. He comes with Ruthless and Lucky, and he's the first character for whom you get tokens in the weekly challenge, seeing those rewarded when you get to 1200 stars. If you're using characters that provide multiple attacks, his situational leadership trait Teamwork kinda adds up to a degree. He's kind of the lowest maintenance hero out there, so that's a plus. His skills usefulness tapers off when you're relying on just standard attacks, but I don't know, it's not too bad having him hanging around. Merle gets a modest damage boost against any enemy of a higher level than your team with his Jackass trait. It's kind of like Aaron's ability, but it's more universal. It doesn't require you to have already attacked the target to kick in. It's a flat bonus, doesn't require percentages, but it doesn't amount to as much as the more innovative and exotic skills of the likes of Yumiko or Rick when you get to the higher difficulties. It's kind of hard to recommend investing in Merle. Carl has one fantastic use. Make him a defender in guild wars or on outposts. He is intensely frustrating when he's used there. Sadly, his second chance leadership trait, granting a chance for a reprieve when you're supposed to die, is not so helpful. If you're in the position where Carl and his team are gambling on escaping certain death, you're not in a great position and you're likely going to be taken out regardless. You're better off having characters with traits that make it more likely to ensure the battle will go your way than in having an unreliable escape route if it doesn't. Finally, Tara is a favourite of newer players, and it's easy to see why. Healing charge keeps you in the fight a lot longer. The only problem is, at much higher difficulties, no matter what you do, any hit that you take will red or dead you, negating the usefulness of the trait. There's also the basic principle that you want to be using abilities that make the fight go the way you want it to go, rather than those that you hope will dig you out of a hole if it doesn't. At really high difficulties, Tara's trait just doesn't help and she's got to stay on the bench. Moving on to the more up close and personal types, Scouts are quick and agile, and they inflict more base damage than any other class. They're not naturally equipped to take a hit, but they can scope out a map effectively and target even the toughest types of enemy for elimination. There's some good characters in the Scout class as well. Survivalist Rick is perhaps the best of the bunch. He grants a boost to the Scout class's already powerful charge attack, and every time a charge attack is made, he bounces a charge point to a survivor on the team. As a leader, this is a pretty awesome skill, making those mega powerful charge attacks that you have to rely on even more effective and frequently topped up. Huntsman Daryl is a lot of fun and he's very effective. His prowl trait means that you can slide on by walkers and give them a poke, inflicting an attack with slightly reduced damage. Couple this with weapons with swift strike and you can really take down a lot of walkers per turn. There are many mission types where being able to pass by walkers to reach an exit or objective is incredibly useful, and being able to land risk-free hits is just fantastic. Glenn has a weird set of aspects to his leadership trait, Lucky Dumpster. He originally had just the ability to earn some supplies for each kill, but it's the second aspect of his trait that can really help. He can interact with an object and then still move and attack. It may not sound so great, but on search missions, you can double the amount of containers you can search, or you can open a gate and still act. If you have swift strike, you can kill, search and kill again, or search, kill, search. It's not a flashy leadership trait, but it is surprisingly useful in the right circumstances. Beth is notable. She has one of those you inflict a set amount of damage ability with her lethal aid trait. It's pretty useful. It can affect any walker of any level, just like Mercer's skill, but you have to build up those charge attacks first, which is tough to do without having charge attacks to kill things with. So she's just a little bit tricky to use. And you have two great and one situationally useful heroes in the class already. Carol's aim for the head leadership trait increases the chances that your attacks are going to be critical hits. We've already gone over why that's not particularly useful at very high difficulties, so Carol is not a character that I would recommend. Finally, Gabriel has his Mysterious Ways trait. It's this inherent dodge ability plus a sort of ingrained luck boost. It kind of seems weird as well. Did Gabriel make a habit of doing Matrix-esque bullet time dodges in the show? It's kind of weird that he has this ability. It seems like it'd suit Jesus more with his martial arts prowess, but Gabriel? I don't know. It just seems weird to me. Anyway, you don't really want to be relying on dodge in any case. If the bad guys are that close, you've kind of messed up already, and we've gone over trying to get out of a sticky situation as opposed to controlling the battle and making it go your way. Unfortunately, Gabriel, love him as a character, he's not really that useful in the game. If scouts are the glass cannons who dish out huge damage but can't take it, bruisers are the opposite. They're roadblocks that can take the punishment and still keep going. They're the slowest class, they don't hit very hard, but they can stay in the fight longer than anyone else, especially if you equip them with damage reducing and health boosting badges. The weapons cause little actual damage, but they can stun humans and most walkers, and their best weapons have some interesting effects that do a lot to help you control the enemy's actions. Personally, I'm kind of a big fan of T-Dog. I think he's great. He's got this skill called Beat 'em Up, and if you re-roll him to have Punish and Retaliate, he just swings whatever he's carrying like a madman. It's kind of funny to watch, and even though any Bruiser weapon is like a pillow in terms of damage, those multiple chances to inflict stun and cause a little extra damage can really add up. But mostly it's just great to watch him just swinging away whatever he's got, just walloping the enemy multiple times. I think he's a good character. Eugene's natural defense to effects is obviously helpful for a melee character. He has a reduced chance of suffering critical hits and a lessened chance of being stunned when struck. It's a great skill for a bruiser to have, though total stun resistance cannot exceed 75%. His skill's also called Mullet Time, so that to me suggests his ridiculous haircut is somehow responsible for these almost superhuman abilities, and I'm just a fan of that. Morgan has a chance to get a charge point whenever he's hit. That obviously has some use for a class where you are there to get hit. That defensive charge skill is likely to net you some charge points somewhere along the line, but he doesn't have any particular resistance to bleeding, being stunned, or any other effects. There's a lot of interesting bruiser weapons that confer good effects when you use a charge attack though, and if you re-roll him to have lucky, his skill does have a good chance of kicking in. Starting with charge points can really gain a huge advantage early on for Riot Gear Glenn. Ready for Action confers this chance to begin charged on all team members if RGG is the leader, and that can get you the advantage you need to gain the upper hand in a mission from the start and continue to victory. As far as bruiser choices go, he's a community favourite among veterans, and that's really got to be worth something. Negan's ominously named Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo is an interesting trait. The closest enemy is marked, reducing the damage they can deal, while in turn making them more susceptible to damage dealt by your team. In addition, the marked enemy cannot inflict status effects. That's kind of nuts and abrogates some of the most dangerous aspects of enemies like spiked walkers, tanks, goos, and humans. As a leader, and let's face it, Negan is really not one to follow, he imposes this on 3 enemies instead of 1. It's a good trait, he's a good example of the bruiser class. The warrior class is not as tough as the bruisers, they're not as fast or as hard hitting as the scouts, but they do have some interesting characters and some interesting weapons that can make them a considerable addition to your team. Beta's a good character, or Beta, depending on how you prefer to say it. Similar to Huntsman Daryl, his One with the Herd trait is a skill that lets you slide by the enemy. Instead of attacking the walker, Beta gives them a nut tap and they follow him. They're herded, meaning they shuffle after you and they don't attack. If you attack them, they snap out of it, but it's great being able to completely nullify a walker by just passing by them. It's handy on some mission types and very fun. If he's the leader, even ranged characters gain this ability, and it opens a whole new means of playing a mission. You also have a slim chance of getting a charge point when you Pied Piper or Walker, and that's a pretty big deal too. Ezekiel's Regal Authority is a sort of preemptive, one-off Overwatch style attack, and that's pretty good. This is a character with whom I have limited experience in practice. At the time of making this video, I'm leveling him up and I'm keen to try him out, because in the community at large, he's considered a very credible hero, ever since some changes were made to him in a recent update. In this case, I'll defer to the popular opinion and concede that the Good King is worthy of your consideration. Michonne is worth a shout. She has thinning the herd, which in practice means potentially reducing threat and gaining a charge point with each kill. A slight hitch is that, should you put her in the leader slot, this only works for melee characters. It's an okay leadership trait. There's better ways to get either of these boosts from individual characters, but it is nice to have this combo in one package. Jesus, well, he's got an okay set of traits. His hand-to-hand leadership trait is a straight-up boost to health and damage, but it's kind of negligible. It's not very exciting or as battle-defining as other heroes in the class. Plus, who do you want to use? A weirdo who wears other people's faces and looks great with a chainsaw, or this guy who fake begrudgingly lets himself be called Jesus and whose character model is wearing Wellington boots and a beanie hat? I don't have much faith in Jesus. Last and definitely least is Jerry. Everyone's always asking who's the best character. Well, here's the answer to the question of who is the worst. Jerry has a percentage chance to reduce some damage when hit. That's right, he has a chance to reduce some damage by a negligible amount while being torn to shreds by a walker that'll reduce him to a red health bar or just outright finish him off at any respectable difficulty setting. As a leader, get this, you must be adjacent to Jerry for this to even work for everyone. So, as if traits that result in the player planning to fail weren't bad enough, this one can't be relied upon to provide the paltry, literally pointless effect that is its purpose for being. And it only works if you hang around as a clump of walker chum with Jerry. Jerry may have a cheerful spirit in the show, but you're going to be spirits before you know it if you rely on the festering fatberg of a leadership trait that is Jerry's bodyguard ability. So there you go. Is there more to it than simply picking the best heroes and having at it? Yeah, of course there is. There's considerations like the best badges to equip, best weapons to use, which heroes to bring, all based on the mission you're undertaking. The choice of traits, which you can re-roll, is hugely important to maximizing any character's effectiveness. In-game strategy and tactics are still the number one consideration in any case, but this examination of the heroes, it would go on forever if you considered every factor from every angle. As it is, those are my opinions on the current state of heroes in Walking Dead No Man's Land, and if you take one thing on board, please, let it be to not let Jerry take up a place in your team.